I'm Ed Evans. Today is February 9th, 2025. You are listening to me at Climate Damage on YouTube. You may see this video elsewhere. I don't know if anybody will ever see it. In any case, the oligarch state continues to grow and it continues to attack science. One, they're after Noah. They expect to remove climate change and global warming, I suppose, from the vocabulary at NOAA. I suppose they'll go after NASA soon. I don't know how they're going to manage that. Going after NOAA and climate change makes no sense at all. After all, atmospheric administration is a part of the name, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Atmospheric science tells us the climate is changing. So why they want to remove climate change from NASA and NOAA, I don't have the foggiest idea. It's just nutty. I grew up reading Mad Magazine, and that's the only way I can relate to the world we see today. It is madness.
Welcome to New Scientist Weekly. We're going to start with two important messages. First, you'll hear from historian Nancy MacLean from Duke University.
What we are experiencing now in the United States under the second Trump administration is deadly serious. It is a war on science, knowledge, and expertise in general, and it is a war that is enlisting every lever of executive power available. As a U.S. historian, I can tell you that we have never seen anything akin to this before in audacity and scale, even at the height of the Cold War Red Scare.
And now you're going to hear Gretchen Goldman, and she's president of the Union of Concerned Scientists in Washington, D.C.
We are witnessing an all-out assault on federal science in the United States. Long-standing legal precedent, policies, processes, and norms are all being ignored. Critical government functions are being disrupted, and the scientific community is reeling.
On the show this week, we're going to get into what's at stake in the US. I'm Rowan Hooper, joined in New York this week by Chelsea White. Hey, Chelsea.
Hi. Yes, on the show this week, we're going to talk about the chaos engulfing science here in the US.
And we should say it's happening in the US, but it affects the rest of the world. The US is by far the biggest funder of science in the world. So an attack on US science is an attack on all of science.
And we're also hearing about the latest understanding on whale song, on whether whale song is a kind of language. And we find the scientifically perfect way to boil an egg.
Before we get to that important stuff, we're going to start with this small matter of the war on American science.
Yeah, it does seem quite important. As many know, there's a lot happening at the moment, and that's part of the game plan here, which is to just generate chaos. James Deneen is here with us. James, let's start with how the administration is aiming to remove references to climate change from government websites.
Yeah, so some of this happened during the first Trump administration, but this has really ratcheted up in a big way. Agencies like the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Defense and many others have deleted web pages that make reference to climate change and removed mentions of global warming and climate change and related subjects from thousands of pages. That comes as billions of dollars of research grants from the National Science Foundation are under review to determine if they align with the administration's objectives, which could impact climate-related research, although it's unclear exactly how at the moment. And more than 1,000 employees at the Environmental Protection Agency were warned they could be fired at any time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of anxiety going around, isn't there? Quite understandably.
Yeah, I spoke with a climate scientist yesterday who was visibly emotional about a lot of this that's happening. And there was an episode this week that really highlighted all of this. One of the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's main climate data portals came offline. And this came right after reports that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency had accessed the Climate and Weather Agency's computer system. And this raised a lot of concern among researchers, especially on social media, that the data would no longer be accessible. But NOAA says that outage was actually just for routine maintenance, and the site is back up and running for now. So that's good. But just the idea we could lose access to such fundamental scientific information and data about our planet is definitely concerning. Like you said, not just for the U.S., but for the world. The U.S. is a major provider of climate and weather data. So a loss of access to climate or other scientific data here would affect researchers everywhere.
Yeah, alarm bells are ringing, and it's not just in the sort of climate sector. We should also think about all of the effects of the Trump administration has had on the sciences with regard to health. So Grace Wade is here. Grace, there's been this huge amount of chaos at the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the NIH was ordered to pause nearly all external communications and activities, and that includes reviewing and awarding research grants. As such, all grant review sessions scheduled for January were canceled, and weekly reports on disease surveillance and treatment recommendations from the CDC have been on hold since January 21st. And so as you can imagine, this has generated a bunch of confusion and uncertainty. Both employees and their collaborators don't have a clear understanding of what is going on or when these pauses will end, which makes it harder or in some cases impossible for them to do their work. I will say that we are starting to see some activities get up and running again. So the FDA has started issuing warnings about medications, and the CDC began sharing influenza surveillance data again. And many of the grant review sessions scheduled for February are proceeding, but not all. For instance, meetings of the National Advisory Council on Minority Health and Health Disparities and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute were canceled, and we just don't really know why.
Yeah, there's also, in order to align with President Trump's executive orders to halt work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and another order that only recognizes two genders, there's a long list of words that are being scrutinized in these grants at the NSF and elsewhere, right? So these are words like underrepresented or socioeconomic or disability or women. And so that brings up a lot of questions about what kind of research will be going forward once it begins again.
Yeah, and some words are being outright banned. So the CDC has ordered any publication that uses the word gender or transgender, for instance, to be pulled or revised, even if they've already been submitted or accepted to journals. There are also efforts to control publicly available information posted by health agencies like the CDC. Key websites on contraception guidelines or information about HIV risk in LGBTQ communities were taken offline in the first few weeks. While some of them are back, including a tool to track rates of infectious diseases, others are still down or have been scrubbed of certain words or groups of people. Researchers I've spoken with are quite worried about large data sets being tampered with. Even things like decades-long surveys on youth mental health have disappeared, presumably because it includes information on participants' gender.
Wow. And Grace, what about foreign aid? Because USAID, that's the US Agency for International Development, that's really under fire, isn't it? And that puts lives at immediate risk.
Right. So USAID provides humanitarian assistance to more than 100 countries, employs about 10,000 people, and has a budget of more than $40 billion a year. And Elon Musk, who has been tasked with slashing government spending, has described USAID as, quote, a criminal organization on X, and claiming it is time for it to die, and that, quote, we spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper.
USAID does things like provide HIV medicine to children, prosthetic limbs to soldiers in Ukraine. It clears landmines around the world. It helps in Africa. It helps prevent Ebola outbreaks. It does all this stuff.
Yeah, it does amazing work around the world, and it helps keep Americans and its allies safe by containing the spread of infectious diseases and help stabilizing certain regions.
I will also say that USAID also funds scientific research. It sort of operates from the perspective that we live in a connected world, which we do, and it does really important work that helps predict food crises or clinical trials on HIV and malaria treatments. Really, really crucial stuff.
Let's end this segment with Gretchen Goldman again. As I said, she's the president of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and I asked her what we can do.
These memos don't erase reality. You can't override legal precedent and congressional power with a quick executive order out of the White House. So we have to fight this illegal power grab. Despair is not an option. The scientific community must be clear-eyed about the path ahead. We can show up for each other, we can be creative, and we can choose what's right over what's easy. We're going to need a lot of brave people. we're not backing down. The Union of Concerned Scientists is here, and many others are working to fight this through all levers possible because this can't stand, it won't stand, and we're ready to fight.